there! It's Riikka Kovasin here with the first Facebook Live of this year, if I'm correct. So let me just first switch on the computer screen as well so I can see the comments when they start rolling up. So just hang in there. Let's see if it's here. If I can see myself, it seems that it is there. So yeah. Hey Palena. So if you can just let me know if you can see and hear me, okay, while we are waiting for the actual live to start. I have a new phone, so I'm hoping everything will run smoothly, but let's see. I'm not sure if it's Happy Epiphany or what greeting you should have, but good Epiphany to those who are celebrating it. We are having a wonderful winter weather here in Finland, so the tag actually kind of matches what the scenery looks like here in Helsinki at the moment. Have a really good winter this year because normally it's much more slush and not that nice probably. Hey Karita! But this year it's snow and ice. So good. Sanotaan nyt suomeksikin, kun suomalaisia on taas linjoilla. Kiitoksia. Eli tervetuloa. Mikä Tapani? Ei tänään Tapani ole, tänään loppiainen. Rallalle. Loppiaisena askarrellaan tällaista talvista tagia. Kiitoksia. Kun tulitte, laittakaa kommenttia, jos kuuluu ja näkyy hyvin. Tai no, tuosta omalta ruudultani näen, että jotakin ainakin näkyy, mutta mites toi ääni, kun piti pistää se tietenkin pois, ettei kierrä. So, a couple of words in Finnish, because there's Finns watching as well. But this is something I'm recreating during this live. But just let me know that if you can hear me okay, because I have the screen there. So I can actually see that I can see at least some kind of video feed is coming through, but I'm just hoping you are hearing me as well. Karita, muitakin tulisi katsoa, mutta eivät ole päässeet ryhmään. Olen pahoillani. Mulla ei ole enää noita oikeuksia siihen, niin kuin admin-oikeuksia. Päästään ryhmään, mutta tietenkin recording nauhoite tulee tästä, mutta onpa tylsää, että ei ole päässyt, koska live nyt on aina kivempi livenä. So, where are you from? What have you been up to? Is the new year treating you okay? If you are wanting to create something like this along the way, I have a blog post about the mediums I'm using today, but let me quickly go over them while we wait. Hi Diane! So I'm using a chipboard tag as my base. Then there's a chipboard decorative embellishment on top. Then there's some tissue paper and white gesso, soft matte gel, heavy body gel. I'm kind of warming up to this one. I usually like using the 3D gel, but I have been kind of gravitating towards the heavy body gel lately. And then some embellishments. There's some paper straws, little star embellishment, some wax and jewel effect paste. Our only kind of color is except of the white and silver tones is Prussian blue liquid acrylic paint, some Melange Pebbles, and then hot glue. Hot glue gun with some hot glue. I'm so hoping that I'm not babbling just in vain, so you actually can hear me. Hopefully. I haven't seen any comments, but I'm guessing you would say if you didn't hear me. If there was some trouble with the voice. But still a couple of minutes, so please just let me know or give a thumbs up or something that I know that you can hear me. They do say that a picture tells 1,000 words, but still I think it might be... Hi Joanna! Might be better if you can hear me what I'm then babbling about. Kuuluu hyvin. Kiitos Karita. Thank you. Great. Now I'm just not babbling to the walls and my family here. While we wait, let me try which place is the detail camera. Quite there. So there's some glitter, metallics, and then a touch of blue. Kind of see-through layers, as this is more like ice than perhaps snow. But if you want more texture or kind of more snowy, then paper paste is an excellent choice for snow, because it has that little grain type of thing already happening. Or then you can just mix some ultra thick embossing enamel or the mini art stones to white gesso and make your own snow paste that way. Hey Johanna! Almost time. Still babbling a little bit. Along the way, if you have any questions, just let me know. I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat, but if I somehow miss your question, then I'll go through every comment after the live and I can answer them. So, thank you all for joining me today, and let's start with the icy tag. Like I said, there we're going through the materials. I'm using a chipboard tag as my base. Naturally it could be anything, just needs to be somewhat sturdy because we're adding the mediums on top and they will warp the thin papers. So just something sturdy. It can be a piece of a cardboard box even. Then on top I adhered the other one of these chipboard pieces from Mechanical Flourishes set. You can see the other one on the sample and the other one I already adhered to my tag, ready to go. For this I used just regular craft glue, but I wanted to do it beforehand so it will be already put when I'm then starting layering on top. You can use heavy body gel as well, but the drying time is so different than just a regular craft glue, and it will hold because it's paper on paper. Then I'm opening my matte gel jar and taking the tissue paper. This one is, I think, called Carte Postale, one of the Finnabair tissue papers. And then let's find a good spot, maybe there. hoping that's enough. Yes, it is. And then we need a flat brush. Now, why I'm doing this, I wanted some texture to the base, but, well, I normally use some kind of medium to do that, but in this case I wanted to use something else, so I adhered the chipboard. But then I have this idea of going with the snowy and winter-like theme, so when snow falls it covers all the hard edges. So the really hard edge that we now have between the base and the chipboard element was a little bit too much, in my opinion, to the winter theme. So I just took the gel and I'm applying the tissue paper on top. This kind of rounds the edges, but also adds the pattern. Well, after all the mediums on top, there's not that much pattern peeking through than in the edges, but still there is something, and the effect of the kind of softened edge is there anyway. So I thought to show this because maybe, just maybe, some of you haven't thought that you could do it like this as well. The chipboard doesn't have to be the kind of top layer, but you can layer something on top. It could be stamping, it could be other mediums, but this is a fun little technique also. I'm sandwiching the tissue paper between layers of gel. So there's a layer of gel underneath, and then I'm going over again. Hei Heidi! Kiitos kun sinäkin tulit. Niin, sanotaan suomeksi vielä se, että totta kai kysymyksiä voi kirjoittaa siis suomeksikin. Vastailen niihin sitten. I'm not going through every little gap because I want the fluffiness kind of to stay there. So it's not that I'm poking every little gap or groove there is. I'm poking a hole to it to show the pattern, but some of them, highlighting those bigger shapes. The fun thing also, when these creases appear to the flat areas like the background, then when I'm dry brushing gesso over this one in a minute, then those are highlighted like little, I'm not sure how they are called, but ice, like those little shards of ice or little fraction lines. Hi Cindy! Hei Eija! Kiitos kun olette katselemassa tänään Tapanin päivänä. Miksi meidän sanotaan tätä loppiaista koko ajan Tapanin päiväksi? If you're just joining, thank you! And have a good epiphany, I think this is called. I'm just doing the first layer for my little winter icy tag. Hey Nina! I've started by adhering a chipboard shape to a chipboard tag, and now I'm adhering a tissue paper on top, giving that chipboard shape a little bit roundish look, like it was underneath snow, so it's not such a hard line anymore, and also adding a little bit of texture and pattern on top. Some of the grooves or gaps in the chipboard I'm then poking through, kind of revealing the pattern or the shape more, and some of them I'm just leaving as it is, like underneath a snowdrift. So here we go. First layer done, then the brush to the water jug, or otherwise it will dry solid. This tissue that I'm using is ready patterned. It's from the Finnabair line, but like you said, you could, Heidi, you could stamp it or pattern it yourself, or any kind of really delicate paper would do. Kind of pattern paper like cardstock, that's a little bit too sturdy and won't reveal the shape that well. But if you have a napkin, that would do. Any kind of really soft paper that wraps things. As this is Finnabair and Friends group, then I'm using the soft matte gel, or Finnabair gel, but you could use a decoupage version as well. I'm sorry about that. So there's something magical happening. Maybe that's just Facebook didn't like me tearing the paper and wanted to jump ahead. And now the feed is so... Okay, that's just awful looking. Now it's all pixel thingies. Well, it is what it is. I'm sorry about that. It was so nice and now it's all yucky again. I'm not sure what's wrong with Facebook. Getting better, hopefully. But yeah, let's still continue. Hopefully it will be okay. If you couldn't see, because there was the connection, I just tore the excess off. If you want a nicer edge than this a little bit torn looking, then use a wet brush, because when you add moisture to the tissue paper, it will rip nicely on that point. So if you would like to have like a circular shape or something, use a wet brush and then you can tear the nice piece out without the tissue paper going like ripping in the wrong parts. Now let me dry this really quickly, or at least somewhat dry this. I'm trying to be careful when I'm drying. Not that this one has a really thick layer of the gel, but still, as it's an acrylic based medium, it can start boiling, and that's not the look I'm going for here. While it's still a little wet, so I'll leave it air drying. And then use white gesso to the barn star first. Thank you, Kareta. I thought this might be an interesting, because normally you put it underneath everything, like the tissue paper, kind of the first layer, or then just used parts of it as a focal point. But you can kind of hinder the shape or alter it just by using tissue paper. So it's a delicate layer, but makes all the difference between the kind of hard edges of just a cut chipboard piece and then covered with the tissue paper. Softens things up. So for the barn star, I'm just painting it white with white gesso. Normally I'm kind of keen on the colors that the mechanicals have, but in this case I wanted to keep the color palette as wintry and freezing as possible, so needed to cover that. Nice to hear, Anita, that you will give this one a go. Of course, depending on the pattern, it might be harder or easier. The Finnabair chipboards have a lot of these little openings, which are really nice. But if you use more streamlined chipboard, the effect is, of course, a little bit different. But in this case, I really like how it alters the chipboard, kind of making it underneath. I'm hoping a snowdrift in this case, but it also could be used in a Halloween project, like cobwebs or what are those cloths on a mummy called, like wrappings, because it hides the shape underneath this little veil. There I tore a little bit too much, so I'm adding a little bit more gesso there, kind of hiding the chipboard. I'm now trying to dry brush the gesso, so I'm not turning the whole thing white, but moreover going over the raised areas. I'm not sure if camera is picking that up, but for example here the crease has more white. It's kind of making it more prominent, the texture, and then there's still the pattern underneath. Hi Fraser! Yeah, finding live is a little bit tricky, I've noticed, because somehow they don't pop to the actual feed, or at least sometimes I need to go to the actual album and then search for the live happening in the video section. So it can be a little bit tricky, but glad you found us. This is just step number 2, so we're not doing this in a fast pace. First I just adhered the chipboard to the chipboard tag, then I covered the whole thing using tissue paper, so making the shape more rounded, more kind of mystical. And now I'm dry brushing white gesso on top. The gesso in this case has 2 things. It's adding white, kind of making the snowy, wintry effect, but also the gel resists color somewhat because it's an acrylic based gel. So if I would add watercolor on top, let's say, it will just be little pearls of color. It won't adhere. So this is giving the colors coming on top, some tooth, a place to stay, as it is a primer, of course. If you would have or would like to have more of the pattern showing and not just adding white on top, of course you could coat the whole thing using clear gesso, and that's how you get the ground for the colors, but without adding any color or colorant on top. Let me quickly now dry, that will do it. Then the only color part. Otherwise it's just white and silver. I'm using the liquid acrylic Prussian blue. This is one of my favorite colors. And I see there's a well of gesso, so I'll put a drop in there. Then I take my brush and just dab here and there. That's looking interesting, let's say. But then let's bring in the water. I'm diluting the paint heavily, so much that it will it needs the ground, because while you are diluting an acrylic paint, you are diluting the pigment, but you are also diluting the binder. So especially on top of a hard surface, or how do you say, difficult surface. Well, not difficult perhaps, but non-absorbing, because they work so differently compared, for example, to paper. So on top of that, 30% water is the absolute maximum. You probably want to avoid even adding that much, because then you dilute the binder and the color just won't stick anymore. So even though I love using liquid acrylics like watercolor, it depends on the surface how much water I'm able to add. Here that we have gesso, so we have a ground for it to stick onto. It's okay-ish. Paper would be even better, but on top of glass, you all know what happens if you have a really wet brush and try to go over a plastic embellishment with a really wet brush and acrylic. It just starts making these droplets and won't stick, and that's because of the binder. You have diluted the binder too much. Sorry about the noise again. If you want to make an acrylic paint more like a glaze, see-through version, then use a gel. Like a Finnabair soft matte or soft gloss gel. Use that with your acrylic paint and you can get a glaze, so a see-through paint. And that's how you keep the binder working. Because there is the diluting element has the binder. So while you dilute the pigment, you don't dilute the binder. As you can see, I dried the layer and then add some splashes. And again, I diluted the paint because otherwise it will be too harsh of a contrast. Let me just dab some of the darker ones away because I think they are stealing the attention. Here we go. Then, sorry, again drying. Okie dokie. It's still somewhat wet, but we'll manage, I hope. Then let's start building the actual composition. And this one is really easy. There's not that many elements. It's a small tag after all. If you want to make it a bigger one, for example, do a whole canvas, then just oomph everything up. Add a little bit more. For my base, I'm using these paper straws that have nice white and silver pattern. If they would be all kind of wrong color, let's say they would be black or red, then just paint them with white gesso first before adhering them, and it will be fine. Here I deliberately chose paper straws that go with the color scheme already, so we don't have to paint those. Hi Matilda! So Poland. I know that there's Finns and then Poland and who else did I see? Where are you from? I'm from Finland. Snowy Helsinki. Here we go. I'm using the heavy body gel to adhere the paper straws. Before I preferred the 3D gloss gel because I usually used my finger to make the compositions, but somehow I've now started to favor what is this? A palette knife. Sorry about the losing words here. And that's why I'm then gravitating towards the heavy body gel. Golden wet, says Anita. Golden wet is kind of normal winter weather nowadays in Helsinki, but we have luckily snow here. It's so much brighter, not that dark, because usually it's just slush and wet and really not good. Netherlands. USA, yay! Hello world. So just adding the star on top. Then the pebbles. This one is a little bit too big. That's better than that. Probably that one as well. Gemini. Hi, Steffi. Just let me know if anyone needs a recap what I have been doing so far. Then a trick. If you have participated on my Facebook Lives before, this is something I think I tell every time, but as it works, it's a good trick. When I add the gel underneath, I then push first the pebble and then twirl it a couple of times, because then I'm feeling that I get more even distribution of the gel underneath, because if there happens to be an air bubble, then while it dries it looks different. There's kind of a gap there, so that's why we want all the air out. If I would turn these into rusty pebbles or nuts and bolts and or pearly, I would paint over them, then it's like no big deal how the gel is underneath because you can't see it. But as these stay transparent, then I want as even distribution as possible. Hi Donna! Glad you called us! I know it's a bit tricky to get to the live. So now I'm just adding the pebbles here and there. kind of trying to keep the composition going here. And I also don't want the pebbles now going so they are partly on top of the chipboard and partly just hanging in mid-air, because that will show in this case. If I would paint the whole thing with black gesso, my kind of preferred medium, then it wouldn't matter because you can see through the pebble, but in this case it's handier to have it laying as flat as possible. I'm guessing that's all the pebbles for this one. Then we are adding the ice, and for that I'm using hot glue. I have several hot glue guns, and what I use them for is almost never adhering anything, but adding texture or using them to make the embellishments in the silicone molds. That's the way I use them, but hardly ever to adhere anything. So now I'm kind of thinking or imitating, or how would I say, playing that the hot glue would be ice or icicles, and just kind of following the lines I have already, and then making them little pointy ends. On top of the paper straws here, I also go to the other direction because otherwise it would look a little bit funny. That's what I did with this. I did all the icicles going this way, and then it started to be really lopsided as there wasn't anything going to the other direction. So even though icicles don't work this way, they don't defy gravity, I'm still adding some going upwards, so there's kind of matching things on both sides. Let's do one there. Hopefully I don't get the glue gun sticking to the background. I just hope that these would stay as clear as they are now. They will start become more murky, as you know, but still, it's still a fun thing. I know this is something that Finnabair also uses, hot glue for texture, and many others. It's handy and easy. A tool that's not just for adhering, and like I said, for me personally, almost never adhering. Because I don't know about you, but every time I tried making a wreath or something using a hot glue, and then after a while everything started popping out. So I got tired of that and then use other adhering mediums than hot glue. Now, where to add some? Is there a kind of a blank spot, but do I like the look of it? I love the word Seth Apter uses when he's kind of making the composition. He's auditioning embellishments and stuff. There's not much auditioning hot glue, because if it's there, then it's there on top of such a paper surface. I can't get it out. So better leave it for now. We can always come back. Heidi says that she doesn't get along with hot glue either. Good. Well, not good, but it's relieving. How do you say it? It's a relief to know that I'm not alone in that. Then we need this one to cool before I can start dry brushing anything, or then I get my brush stuck on top of the hot glue. Though I think I missed a pebble there, because that's quite a nice looking thing. Let's adhere that one on top while we wait the hot glue to cool. I know a quick way to cool it, but that's a little bit tricky. Let's say I would be off for 10 minutes, taking it outside. Anita says that keep looking for a good glue gun. Thought that was the problem. I have tried several and all of them have the same issue, but still it might be just that. But I found that hot glue is really kind of hard medium when there's any kind of movement in the piece, because it's such a rigid thing after drying. So for example, in a canvas, if you add something and then there's the movement of the canvas, then it just plops out. I'm not sure if it's just me, but that's something that always has happened. And the same with wreaths. They just pop out. Or the temperatures change is the other thing. Let me gently try with my finger. Yeah, they are. We are good to continue. Not getting the brush stuck to the project. If there now would be the hot glue threads that usually appear when you use hot glue, then here's the solution. Just heat the whole thing just a little bit, so then the little string like thingies kind of melt into the background and you get rid of those. Donna says that she finds hot glue very challenging too. Well, yeah, and Anita gave up with hot glue, so I think it's a common problem. Karita finds these pebbles hard to use and uses a Finnish term, hillota, which means makes jam. It's kind of hoarding or saving them for better use. These are one of my favorite things because they are so versatile. Here I'm hoping that they are kind of icy pebbles, and then when you add pearly paint on top, they look like giant pearls. Or if you add rust paste on top, they look like these grungy nuts and bolts. Or if you use the gold leaf on them, they are just gems. Or they are one of my favorite things, especially these round ones, the first ones. Now there's a big variety of different ones, but these were the first ones, if I remember correctly. Finn released back then, and they are so handy. Kind of a blank canvas in that way. What I'm now doing is again dry brushing. So I'm adding a little bit of the white to the pebbles and most of all to the hot glue. Just a teeny tiny touch here and there. It kind of makes it more part of the project, blends it in better, because then it has the same mediums that are underneath also on top. So it's not as glossy and not part of the thing. But let's not go over. I think I have now touched almost every part. Cindy says that hot glue adhesion doesn't work for her either. So I think almost everyone in this live is kind of on the same page with me. Then silver wax. Don't get alarmed by this. It still works. It's not a nice looking anymore. A little bit on the dry side. I have left the jar open sometimes, it seems, or like put it shut poorly. But as you can see, I'm still able to use it because my finger warms the wax and I can then apply it. Yeah, dry brushing on hot glue is definitely a go, and you don't have to use white. You can use what it could be, fire, so reds, oranges, or water, blue. Just experiment. I'm now using my finger, partly because my silver wax, old silver, this one is called, is a bit on the dry side, so I can get something off the jar still. But also that I find this way to kind of gives the best, not the result, but I master my finger way better than if there was a paintbrush kind of between. So I can just add the silver touches where I want them. As you can see, I'm going over with the edges, kind of defining that tag edge there, giving it a little bit of a shadow, because on top of white, the silver looks like a grayish dark tone, so it gives it a nice little edge. And then on this other angle, it then looks silvery. Then just 2 more steps, adding a little bit of shine in both of them. This one is Diamond Rings, a jewel effect paste. So this is really silvery and shiny and lustrous. For this tag, I use just my palette knife. It's not the most desirable sound. It's almost like scratching a chalkboard with your fingernails, so sorry about that if that is something you can also hear. But again, this way I'm not painting, I'm not getting blobs of paint, and it's more kind of out of my hands. It's not deliberate. It's highlighting some of the texture, but not all. More a bit haphazardous. So I like the effect, because whereas with the wax I want it to be on control to get it actually where I want, but this time it's quite the opposite. Depending on the jewel effect paste, there's some bigger and smaller chunks and glitter in them. This one has kind of just silver glitter, but if you would use something with chunkier mica as well, you can see it on the bottom, because they are heavy, they usually tend to go to the bottom of the jar. So to have that whole effect or whole look of the thing, you then need to have a palette knife and kind of scoop from the bottom, and then you get all the nice glossy things. Oh, let's add some splashes with this one as well, because of course we need splashes almost in every stage. Some blue splashes, now some glittery splashes, and then some more splashes coming up. I'm not sure if there's more splashes on me than on the project. Here we go. Then some white gesso splashes with a little bit added glue to make it chunkier. That's probably going to be a little bit pale blue, because my water is bluish, but it will go to the color palette anyway. So this is just regular craft glue with white gesso and then water to make it flick from the brush. This trick I saw in like years and years ago in a YouTube video, I think, because the glue is kind of a gel there, but it will keep the splashes kind of puffy. If you just add water to gesso, they tend to go a little bit not that white and also flat-ish. But when you add a little bit of glue to the mix, they stay puffier and a bit wider. Let me try to show you these, as these are already dried in the example thingy. Now there seems to be a time difference. Is it? Well, it's, yeah, somewhere there. You can see the splashes then. So they are a little bit dimensional. I've tried it with the gel as well, but for some reason, because the base is different, probably like the chemistry works differently, that doesn't work as well as regular craft glue. Okay, now there's white splashes all over the table, but no worry. My husband just looked at me like, really? There's no worry. But it's a glass top table. I am able to remove them because I craft in our living room. I don't have a craft room as such. I have a craft nook. But that works for me. And while the white splashes and some of the other mediums probably are still wet, the last thing is to add a little bit of white glitter here and there. A little bit more shine. I'm such a magpie at some times. Kind of fresh fallen snow on top with the white glitter. And there we have it. Thank you, Tina. Really glittery, sparkly, icy tag. I hope there was some new thingies in this live for you. Thank you, Matilda. Thank you, Anita. And if you have any questions, just leave them to the chat and I'll get back to you. And well, Happy New Year, everybody. 2022. It takes some time to learn to write a new year. But there's some fabulous Facebook Lives coming, I'm sure of it. And, well, fun things, crafty-wise, probably. So keep on watching the Finnabair and Friends Facebook group. And if you happen to watch this recording, please subscribe to my YouTube. And, well, thank you so much for joining. Have a great end of the week and weekend. I'll be seeing you next month. Kiitos kaikki suomenkieliset, kun tulitte. Jos on jotain kysymyksiä, niin ei muuta kuin chattiin vaan niitä laittamaan tai sitten laittamalla ihan meikäläiselle viestiä. Ja, well, jos haluatte huomenna nähdä suomenkielisen liven, niin se tapahtuu sitten tuolla ihan paperiliittimen omalla Facebook-sivulla. So, thank you so much. Have a nice year. And, well, keep safe. Bye!